It's like, this is a strange association, but it reminds me of when I was a child, when I used to make small spaces with the sheets for my bed, using like a chair or like something, and just having like, I do the same.
The anthropologists did to the Freudian theory. I mean, that was impossible to produce this theory, the same theory for all the culture, because if you go to Africa, for example, they have a different life of the dreams. So, and also the symbols, for example, on they're completely different.
Yeah.
When you, for example, went to Africa, you tried to understand their dreams, and it was impossible because they were so cryptic. So, and so, what's your idea about that?
Well, actually, Jen and I were talking this morning about it because we were sort of going like back and kind of having this conversation. If I'm going to be talking to this artist about dreams, and I need to kind of really think about how anthropologists think, how we would talk about dreams, and I've been reading some articles by anthropologists who decided that it was important for them to start analyzing the dreams of their informants and do an ethnography of dreaming. And some of them, there's one who did work in American Samoa, and she came from like a psychological anthropology background, so there is like a psychological anthropology or a psychology anthropology, and so they sort of combined the Freudian and the Jungian with sort of the cultural anthropology background. So they bring in some of the interpretation, but then the Freudian interpretation, but then they try to break it down and say, does this actually apply to the people that I'm working with? And so the woman who was working in American Samoa, she was saying, well, here's what Freud would say about these girls' dreams, and he would say, oh, it's about like relationships or sex or, something going on with their parents or family matters. But she said, but when she looked at it, she said, well, what it reminded me of was the narrative structure was very much similar to the narrative structure that they were raised with in terms of like the folk tales they were told as kids. And so the narrative structure of their dreams sort of fit those folk tales, like very much like in terms of how the beginning, middle, and end worked out. And so she was sort of saying that the Freudian analysis doesn't necessarily kind of fit.
In the middle, I guess, there is a Jungian idea in the middle, because, for example, the students, the successor of one of the successors of Jung was Marie-Louise von Franz, and she studied the folk tales in Europe, for example, the difference into the north and the south of Europe, and for many stuff are different, maybe because the religion, maybe Protestants and Catholics, and I guess this is interesting because if you find this relationship into dreams and folk tales, the folk tales are basically our account deformed and became a novel or something like that. And after someone started to believe, to use, it's also and so I guess in the middle of Freudians and anthropologists there is this idea of the Jungians.